Prime Field.
What if I told you this women's Final Four isn't just stacked, and it's basically a 4-team Super League, 4 number 1 seeds, 4 national title level rosters, a combined record that looks fake. And somehow we still don't agree on the biggest question heading into Phoenix. Who is the real alpha of this Final Four? Is it Sarah Strong, the stat-breaking engine of an undefeated UConn machine? Is it Joyce Edwards turning South Carolina's power game into a straight-up nightmare? Is it Lauren Betts, the player who bends the court just by standing on the block? Or Madison Booker, who might have the most playoff-proof scoring package of anyone left? That's the debate today, because this is not just about the best players. This is about roles, pressure, team identity, and who actually decides the weekend when the margins get tiny and every possession starts to feel like a season. So we're tiering the stars of the Final Four into 4 buckets: Alpha, Co-Star, X-Factor, and Wild Card / Glue. And by the end, I'm giving you the one player I think can flip the whole bracket in about 3 minutes. Let's start with the tier everybody cares about most. My alpha tier is 4 deep. Sarah Strong, Joyce Edwards, Lauren Betts, and Madison Booker. No fake debate there. They're all alphas. The real argument is who deserves the top spot. Let's start with Sarah Strong because the case is ridiculous. UConn is undefeated. They've been mowing through people. And Strong leads that team in points, rebounds, blocks, and steals. That alone would be enough to make the alpha case. But then you add how she does it. She scores efficiently, she rebounds, she passes, she defends, and she stretches the floor. She's not just producing, she's controlling the architecture of the game. That's what makes her different. She can function like a point forward, which means UConn can run offense through her at the high post, and once that happens, you're in trouble. If you stay home on shooters, she scores. If you collapse, she finds cutters. If your big sags off, she can step out and make you pay. She's not just filling a stat sheet, she's dictating what the defense is allowed to do. Now the pushback on Sarah Strong as the number 1 alpha is fair. UConn gives her an elite environment, the spacing is clean, the system is elite. AZ Fudd gives her a deadly perimeter partner. So there is a real question here. Is Strong the top alpha because she's the best, or because she's in the cleanest basketball ecosystem of the 4? And that's where Joyce Edwards has a real argument. Because South Carolina doesn't just benefit from Joyce Edwards. At times that they flat out need her. She gives them a level of direct interior scoring that changes the way you have to prepare for them. She's powerful, efficient, and impossible to deal with when she gets downhill or catches deep. The scary part is she's doing it while still fitting into South Carolina's bigger identity, which is depth, physicality, and relentless pressure. Joyce feels like the alpha whose force is the hardest to ignore. With her, it's not subtle. You feel her in the game. You feel the pressure she puts on the rim. You feel the way she punishes smaller lineups. You feel the way she changes possessions with pure physical presence. Then there's Lauren Betts, who might be the biggest matchup problem in the entire tournament. Because if your offense starts with, we can dump it inside because nobody can guard her one-on-one, you are an alpha, period. Betts gives UCLA an advantage almost nobody else has. She doesn't just score in the post, she creates gravity. Help defenders start cheating toward her. Rotations get longer, shooters get cleaner looks, guards get easier driving lanes. She doesn't need to dominate the ball to dominate the game, and that's what makes her terrifying. And then Madison Booker. Booker might be the most portable scorer in the Final Four. That matters this time of year. Everybody loves layups and threes when the game is flowing. But when the game gets ugly late, when the transition points disappear, when the refs swallow the whistle a little bit, somebody has to go get a bucket against a set defense. That's Madison Booker. She lives in the spaces defenses hate. Mid-range, elbows, tough angle pull-ups, shot clock under 6. Possession breaking down, she can still get you something good. And on top of that, she fits Texas's defensive identity. She gives you steals, length, and activity. So she's not just a scorer, she's part of the pressure system too. So here's my take. Sarah Strong is the cleanest alpha. Joyce Edwards is the most physical alpha. Lauren Betts is the most matchup warping alpha. Madison Booker is the most portable alpha. And honestly, depending on how these semifinal games go, any one of those takes could age like gold. Now let's talk about the players who stop the floor from falling out. Because stars get the headlines, but co-stars usually decide whether a team survives the weird moments. The cold stretches, the turnover runs, the possessions where your alpha gets trapped or crowded or forced into a bad spot. For UConn, that player is AZ Fudd. And this is where UConn gets unfair. Because Fudd is not just a sidekick standing in the corner waiting to shoot. Yes, the shot is elite. And yes, her shooting makes Sarah Strong even more dangerous, but she also gives UConn composure. She gives them veteran poise. She gives them shot making that can settle a run before it becomes a problem. That's the thing about Fudd. She doesn't need a giant volume spike to change a game. Sometimes it's one pull-up, one kick-out three, one calm possession, one raid against pressure, and suddenly UConn is back in control. For UCLA, it's Kiki Rice. Rice is one of those players hoop fans love because does her game make sense? She organizes things. She protects possessions. She defends. She gets the ball where it needs to go. And on a team built around Lauren Betts' interior gravity, that matters more than ever. Because against a defense like Texas, entry passing is not simple. Decision-making is not simple. Ball security is not simple. Rice has to be the adult in the room when the game gets messy. If UCLA gets sped up, she's the one who has to calm everything down. South Carolina's co-star is Raven Johnson, and this is the pick that casuals will underrate. Because Raven doesn't always scream superstar from the box score. But when you watch South Carolina, you see what she does. She organizes, she pressures, she gets them into a fence. She makes sure Edwards gets touches in the right spots. She keeps the defensive shape tight. She is one of those players whose value lives between the plays. She's not always the clip that goes viral. She's the reason the whole thing doesn't wobble. And then there's Rory Harmon for Texas. Honestly, Harmon feels like a co-star with alpha influence. She is the heartbeat of that defense. She creates disruption. She creates tempo swings. She makes opponents uncomfortable. And the reason Texas is so dangerous is because they don't just defend well. They defend them in a way that changes your confidence. Harmon is central to that. And offensively, she's not just a connector. She can put pressure on you, too. And that's what makes her scary. You can't just think of her as a defensive pest. She can own possessions. So, if Texas beats UCLA again, don't be shocked if the headline says Madison Booker, but the game itself was authored by Rory Harmon. My take here is simple. AZ Fudd is the most stabilizing offensive co-star, and Rory Harmon is the most dangerous co-star overall, because defense travels. This is my favorite tier every time, because the X Factor is not just a good player. It's the player whose very strategically specific skill becomes massive in one exact matchup. For UCLA, that player is Gianni Neepkins, because when Lauren Betts bends the defense, somebody has to cash that out. Somebody has to punish the help. Somebody has to make the spacing real. That's where Neepkins comes in. If she's making threes, UCLA becomes almost impossible to guard. Now you're choosing between helping on Betts and giving up a clean perimeter look or staying attached outside and letting Betts eat one-on-one. That's not a real choice. But if the shot isn't falling, suddenly the math changes. Suddenly UCLA can feel more crowded. Suddenly all that interior gravity doesn't produce the same damage. That's why she's an X factor, and not a co-star. Her swing skill changes the equation. For South Carolina, it's Medina Oko. She gives them that second wave of interior size and defensive intimidation. And against UConn, that matters. UConn wants rhythm. Cuts, ball movement, layups, quick reads. Okot's job is to make that all feel harder, more crowded, more physical, more uncomfortable. If South Carolina drags that semifinal into a wrestling match instead of a rhythm game, Okot will be one of the biggest reasons why. For Texas, it's Kyla Oldacre. Because when people talk about Texas versus UCLA, the obvious names pop first. Booker, Harmon, Betts, Rice. But if Texas is going to survive that matchup, Oldacre matters in a huge way. She has to contest. She has to rebound. She has to absorb contact. And more than anything, she has to stay on the floor. That's the assignment. Not dominate, not score 20. Stay viable against one of the most imposing players in the sport and keep Texas from having to compromise everything behind the play. That's a massive responsibility. And it's exactly the kind of thing that decides Final Four games. So for me, the X Factor tier is all about comfort. These are the players who determine whether their team gets to play the style it wants to play. Now we get to the scariest tier. Because alphas are expected, co-stars are game planned for, X Factors are discussed all week. Wild cards are the players who show up and make your scouting report feel incomplete. For UConn, that's Blanca Quinones. Her role is terrifying because she gives UConn a real scoring punch without needing the offense to be redesigned for her. That means there is no safe stretch against the Huskies. You survive strong, you survive FUD. You think maybe this is the moment you stabilize. And then Blanca comes in and keeps the pressure going. That's championship luxury. Bench scoring matters, but bench scoring that feels inevitable is different. that changes how opponents manage rest, foul trouble, and momentum. For South Carolina, it's Agat Maker. She brings the kind of energy that can flip a game before the scoreboard fully reflects it. Defense, deflections, transition activity, secondary scoring. She feels like the player who can create an 8-0 run in the blink of an eye. And those are the runs I think define tournament basketball. That's why I love this tier so much. It's not just about talent. It's about surprise. It's about timing. It's about who enters the game and suddenly changes the speed, tone, or confidence of the moment. And here's my strongest take in this whole video. UConn versus South Carolina may be decided more by the wild cards than the alphas, because both of those teams have answers for star talent. What they can't fully prepare for is a bench player detonating a run that changes the emotional feel of the game. That's where seasons get stolen. So where does all this leave us? UConn versus South Carolina feels like the purest style clash of the weekend. UConn wants spacing, flow, passing, and smart pressure. South Carolina wants force, depth, rebounding, and body blows. If South Carolina can own the glass and create second-chance points, they can absolutely drag UConn into the kind of game that makes the undefeated team feel human. But if Sarah Strong is processing the floor cleanly from the high post, UConn has the answers to almost every coverage you can throw at them. Then there's UCLA versus Texas, which might be the most fascinating rematch in the bracket. Texas already showed they can disrupt UCLA. They already showed they can make the Bruins uncomfortable. But UCLA has leaned even harder into Lauren Betts since then, and that changes the pressure points. If Betts gets deep catches early and Texas starts sending help, then this game becomes about whether UCLA's spacing pieces can finally make Texas pay. That's the tension. So here's where I land right now. I think UConn survives South Carolina because Sarah Strong is the most complete chess piece in the tournament, and I think Texas narrowly edges UCLA if Rory Harmon wins the possession battle and the Longhorns can keep Betts from fully controlling the paint, which sets up the nastiest possible title game. UConn versus Texas. Elite defenses, half-court tension, tough shot-making, no free possessions, no easy points. And the craziest part, even after all this tiering, the player who might decide the whole weekend could still come from the wildcard tier. That's why this Final Four is so good. It has stars, sure, but more importantly, it has layers. Who's the true alpha of this women's Final Four? Sarah Strong, Lauren Betts, Madison Booker, or Joyce Edwards?
Prime Field.